Bonjour tout le monde, this is John from the Operations family. Thanks a lot for watching this video. If you'd like to join our community, feel free to visit our website operations.family and apply. We'd love to have you on board. The interview was organized by Palette, a new sales platform that simplifies and automates sales commissions. If calculating sales commissions is taking too much of your time, or if you'd like to better explain to the sales team how commissions are calculated with real-time dashboards, Palette is directly synchronized with your CRM and other data sources to crunch the numbers and calculate commission payouts. Visit palettehq.com for more information. And now, without further ado, let's hear Alex Kudelka from Bitrise explain to us how he became a VP of Sales in a hyper-growth startup. Hey, Alex.
Hello, hello.
So great to see you. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, I should have gotten the memo about wearing the same sweater.
That's true. That's what we did at Adgolia, actually. Huh? We were always wearing the same clothes, like sales clothes. No? Yeah, so cool to have you. It's really a real privilege to have you in the show. And so let me give a quick introduction of Alex. If I mean a couple of words, that's going to be difficult given your experience. But yeah, like really strong sales experience. Pretty much you were fed with ABC as a toddler, because you worked your way up from sales associate to AE to enterprise AE to strategic AE to director of BD, VP revenue. Extremely strong experience. You opened the Adgolia first office in Atlanta, actually, if I remember correctly. And also we had the privilege of working together, so it's a special interview for me. Am I forgetting anything? Like, would you like to add something?
I don't think you forgot anything. I think the funniest part was ABC, since I was a child, but it's quite true.
Maybe in the end, we'll if we have time, I'll give a couple of notes about it. I remember very fond moments we had about ABC. Could you give a brief interview of Bitrise? Because it's all over the news recently, actually.
Yeah, I wonder why it's all over the news recently. So Bitrise is a tool for developers, right? So we're setting out to be able to enable mobile developers to build their mobile apps better and faster. And so really what that is a mobile first CI tool. And really the first of its kind. There isn't a space for mobile DevOps, and certainly not for cloud CI for mobile teams. And so essentially what we're trying to do is put the heavy lifting and the complexity of building mobile applications, shipping them to the App Store, put that behind the developer and let them focus on developing code and shipping great apps.
Okay, cool. And good job not putting Web3 on the pitch, because this is what I read everywhere now in Twitter. So
no buzzwords.
And so, well, the title of the interview actually was how to be a VP of Sales at a Series B company. But funny fact, Bitrise just raised a Series C company, so it kind of messed up with my interview script. But yeah, could you tell me, just like take 1 minute for that, because it's quite a news actually, and what's the purpose of that new round and what's the ambition for next year?
Yeah, it's one of those rounds where you can take a step back and exhale deeply, because everyone at Bitrise has worked a tremendous amount over the last 2 years from previous funding round to put us in a position economically, from a growth perspective and from a quality of business perspective, to be able to raise such a round. And it couldn't have been done without every single human being at that company, from support to sales to product to engineering, etc. And the goal of that 60 million is to be able to continue the growth that we have, right? So in SaaS, you want to continue to maintain that growth rate. It gets more and more difficult as you make more and more revenue. So the goal is to continue that growth, be able to expand our product into different areas, and focus on that IPO in a few years.
Yeah, and it's actually something that you lived through, because I mean, you were second AE at Adgolia. you joined them when they were doing like what, 1 million ARR, 2 million ARR,
Yeah.
and you stayed with them from, I don't know, like 15 people to 400 people, 2 million to well over, I don't remember, like 60 or 70 million ARR, and Series A, Series B, Series C. So you, yeah, you know what's ahead of you and how difficult it is, like how brutal hypergrowth can be sometimes.
It's unforgiving. Hypergrowth is unforgiving. It doesn't stop for anyone. So it's going to throw things at you that you don't expect. And I think a lot of people think things get easier over time, but they don't. You just get better at dealing with the stuff. So it's
hire 100 people in 6 months or 4 months. And
exactly.
So one of the, regarding like the topic of like being a VP sales in a Series C company, the first question that I had is, why did you choose sales initially? And I'm asking because like sales is like becoming a VP and climbing your way up to becoming a VP is so hard that it doesn't happen unless you have very strong motivation and some kind of like, like deep down, something that led you to sales. And I would love to have your point of view on that, of how did you end up being a salesperson?
Yeah, so I did not necessarily want to be in sales. I grew up with salespeople. My parents were both salespeople, and so I think it was just every day, every week of my life was living the life of revenue and was living the life of getting
negotiating with a dad.
negotiating with my father to be able to go outside for an extra hour, because kids back then actually went outside and stay out after the street lights came on. And so I think what was interesting was we were constantly a competitive family and always wanted to strive for something more. And so we were salespeople in our blood, but also entrepreneurs. And that's what I really cared about. It wasn't that I necessarily cared about sales itself. I cared about building businesses. And the way that I understood how to build a business was, you have to understand revenue. If you don't understand revenue, if you don't understand sales at its core, it's really complex to be able to jump in as an entrepreneur and fundamentally understand how a business can be successful. And so as a kid, that's what I focused on. And I focused on being able to get into marketing and sales roles in high school as internships to be able to cut my teeth. And it just so happened that sales was what I naturally enjoyed as from my personality, and I love working with people. But ultimately, it wasn't that sales was what I had the passion for. It was I knew that that was what was going to ultimately get me one day to owning a business and running a business successfully. And because I enjoyed doing it, it's where I knew that I was going to be able to be successful.
The company, it's something that we never really talked about, but you, what was that, like for 1 year before actually becoming a sales, and also you had like the entrepreneur experience before jumping back to sales. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't think I'll say the name, because then people will Google it and try to find my stuff.
Fair enough. I have a couple of those as well, like previous companies before Palette, that I'll keep as a secret. And so, yeah, why tech? Because I mean, with Bitrise, Algolia, something that struck me is that those are companies that work a lot with engineers, and actually their mission is to empower engineers. Like, why this specific choice? What was so special about it that you went on that path?
I would say a couple of things. I would say number one, it is actually really nice to sell to engineers. It's a really refreshing breath of fresh air to be able to sell to an engineer versus selling to another persona, because they're quite pragmatic about making decisions. And as a sales leader, you're hoping to be able to have a sales process that focuses on the actual black and white picture of purchasing a tool, and not the political cloud around purchasing a solution. And with engineers, it's very black and white. It's very, binary. Does it work or does it not work for our use case? And so being able to build a sales process around a good tool or a great tool with buyers who are incredibly pragmatic about their decision making, it's honestly it's what any sales leader would want to be able to do. I've always enjoyed technology, and I love tech. Anything that is innovative, though. So I don't necessarily want to go sell something that's that there's 50 of on the markets. And that's what's amazing about Bitrise, is that we're building a whole new category of software. And that alone, every single day, makes a salesperson get up and say, okay, I want to be able to keep pushing this. I want to be able to keep selling this, because I'm selling to a space that doesn't even exist yet. And we know that there's a need, and that's energizing, right? That's motivating. And so it's a lot about being able to sell to people who are very pragmatic in their decision making, which makes building a sales motion that much easier. And it's about having a great product in a space that doesn't exist.
The more challenging in a way, because they are less forgiving with outbound emails or cold calling, or like jumping on a 30-minute chat, like not going to happen.
Yeah, we're going through those growing pains now. Absolutely.
What about the culture? Because sometimes you see, well, companies that are very sales driven, other companies that are very tech driven. Mm-hmm. Something that I really liked personally about Algolia was that even though it was a company that was definitely tech driven, there was a lot of respect and mutual interest between salespeople and tech. And I'm wondering at Bitrise or maybe other companies you worked at, how did you make that happen? How do you make that happen? And how is it important, actually? Why is it important?
Yeah. It's critical, I think, for the culture of a company to succeed, to not be a sales-driven company, but to be focused on the customer, which is tech first, then it's sales. So we follow the motion of PLG, right? It's product-led growth. And I think that's kind of where it starts, because it's not a sales-led growth company, it's a product-led growth company. And so we challenge ourselves to what I was saying earlier: let the product do its thing. Let the product speak for itself. We can build the strategy around the mechanisms of how our product monetizes. We can build the strategy around what types of customers we need to spend more time with for their use cases, so that they can be more successful, purchase more Bitrise, everyone's happy. But it comes with just being conscious about the product is king, right? The product is the showcase, and that is what we're focused on. And at Bitrise, very similar to Algolia, we don't have pomp and circumstance for sales, right? We close deals, we celebrate them right away, and we move on. We move on to the next. And we do a very similar thing at Bitrise and Algolia. We add channel, we throw some emojis in there, we celebrate big deals, we talk about who was involved in the deal, and we move on, because we've got growth. Like we have growth to do. We have customers to focus on. We update the whole company on revenue every 2 weeks to the best of our abilities. And it's what it does is it allows us to go back and focus on what's important, which is customer NPS. It's being able to retain and grow our business, and focus on what else we need to be building for the customer. So it's if by default you're building a PLG company, you're going to safely say that you're not going to build an unhealthy sales-driven company, which can be the case. If you start there and you ensure that you're not trying to always focus on the dollar when a customer signs, but focused on the logo, focus on the why, focus on the people that were involved in the deal, then I think you'll safely build an environment where you celebrate wins, you celebrate the fact that you're growing as a business, but at the end of the day, it's about the customer.
Actually, when we were celebrating deals at Algolia, almost every time we would speak about the project and talk about the customers, talk about the people that we were working with, and a lot of them were engineers. And so talking with the team, the engineers at Algolia were super interested, and I remember very well, like Algolia grew and the like offices became larger and larger, and so teams were like more separate. And so when we stopped celebrating and talking about those deals and projects, the engineers themselves came to the sales floor and said, look, like, were those stories that we liked so much? Like, we want to hear about those projects that you work on.
And we're going through that same exact thing right now, because, you know, we're now becoming this remote first, remote only business. And so at Algolia, it was great, right? We could turn around and we could talk about a deal to somebody right next to us. And we could get people onto the bridge and be talking about a large deal that just closed, and walk through the use case and walk through the process. And engineers who actually worked on the feature that drove that deal to be purchased could feel and hear the why. And so we're actually working through that right now, is how do we continue to share the wins? Because it's the same thing. If we go a few weeks without talking about a deal or without talking about revenue, we'll have people in product and engineering be like, hello, are the lights on? What's going on? Can somebody please share with us what just closed? And we're like, well, sorry, we're just moving. We're just moving as fast as we can. And it's true, because you want everyone to tie their work back to the success of the business. And in R&D, it's so easy to just get siloed and to focus on your day-to-day. And so we have plans to solve that, right? Like, we have plans to be able to ask reps to write a closed won or a closed loss story when they close a deal, to be able to shoot that into Slack for people to be able to read stories about deals. You know, Slack has the new video feature, so we're starting to use those things. We use Loom to be able to share stories with each other. So there's ways to solve this as you scale, but it is crucial to continue to do, because it's what creates the environment that you want to have.
Interesting thing that the title of the interview was like being VP Sales in a Series C company, and the first thing that we naturally talked about was how a VP Sales can bring in the engineers and have them pumped about what sales are doing. And I think that's a super important aspect of a VP of Sales job, is bringing everyone, every single team in the company, to rally on like the mission of the company of making customers successful, but also on riding behind salespeople and on their day-to-day job. Something really important that I want to talk with you is that moment when you became a leader, when you went from an individual contributor to a sales leader. Can you walk me through like how that happened? When did you think that, okay, I'm ready to take on that role? Because that's actually a big risk. Like you could get fired. And so, yeah, how did it happen? What's the thing that you felt? How did you know now it's the time?
I don't think you know. I think you know, but I don't think you ultimately know when you're ready to be a people leader. So the moment that it happened for me was, right, it was at Algolia, and it was with Gaëtan. And
Gaëtan is a former VP of Revenue and now Chief Strategy Officer at Algolia.
Yes. And we were at an inflection point in the business where Gaëtan could see the pipeline. Eventually, your inbound is going to plateau, right? Eventually, you're going to hit a critical mass with your pipeline. And in a PLG motion, it's a bit different. But at that time at Algolia, we didn't have this motion, and PLG was still quite new. The buzzword didn't even really exist then. And I was very transparent with him that I knew that my future was leadership. I wanted to be able to build and grow people. And there was a problem to be solved, which was biz dev. It was who's going to own pipeline and ensure that we have what we need to be successful to get to 20, 30, 50, 100 million. And he said, is this something that you can do? right? This is what we need. Is this something you can do? And when
And you
when
said,
yeah, and I said, give me a moment.
no.
But that moment that you say yes, especially when you're somebody who is young and you don't have leadership experience, the imposter syndrome sets in immediately. And for those who aren't aware of imposter syndrome, but in layman's terms, it's essentially you feel like at some moment you're going to get caught for doing a job that you don't know how to do. And guess what? The truth is, at the beginning, that's true. At the beginning, you're having to figure out how to create something from scratch that doesn't exist. And you have never done that before. But our motto, our MO at Algolia, especially with Gaetan, was you need to go do that job before you actually get it, right? And we were doing that. We were trying to build, we were trying to create. And he knew, and I think we all knew, that your leaders who are going to be the most impactful, especially in the early days, are going to be the ones who have been around since the beginning, because they know how to get shit done at the company, which is very different from bringing in external leaders. You need to bring in external leaders to balance skills and gaps that you have within your team. But it's equally as important to balance your leadership team with people who have institutional knowledge of the company. It's critical, and it's what we're doing at Bitrise today.
And you're like, did the hard things that nobody else wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And those first 6 months of building BD at Algolia were just, you could see this far in front of you, because you don't know what you have to do next. You have to take one step. You have to crack one thing, right? So we created sequences, and we started outbounding to people, and then we got one reply, and then we got a second reply, and then we got a third reply, and then we said, okay, what's working, what's not working? Okay, let's tweak here. Okay, it looks like this ICP is responding. Okay, let's go build a list with these people with this sequence. Then we got 10 meetings. Then we got 20, then we got 50, then we got 100. And then all of a sudden we're building 30, 40 million in pipeline in a year for the business. And then we say, okay, we're going to double down on BD. And we're going to say, this is what's going to drive a considerable amount of pipeline for the business. And then it just works. And then overnight, it starts working. But for the first months, even for the first half year, you're going to feel, what the hell am I doing in this role? But then it starts to work, and your team starts to be successful. And then you just have to remember that you have to keep moving. You cannot stay stagnant.
Don't worry, it's going to come. Don't worry, with all these like yelling at you, where's my pipeline? Where's my pipeline?
There's going to be those hard conversations. I mean, Gaetan sat me down one day and was like, you need to do more. I mean, which is fair. I mean, you cannot, it's very easy to, in those first days, to get so caught up in yourself, and to get caught up in the process, and to get caught up in thinking that you're not doing enough, or that you're doing it the wrong way. And what G was really good at doing was being very pragmatic about the situation, and looking at the nuts and bolts of the process, and holding you accountable to, you're here now, figure it out. You're here now, let's do this. There's no need to overthink it. Let's just figure it out.
Companies in hypergrowth, there's a problem to solve. There's no team. Are you the right guy for it? Yes, no, I don't know. I'm going to try. I'm going to feel like shit for 6 months, but I keep moving, and eventually I'll get there.
Yeah. And we're doing the same. We're doing the same thing at Bitrise. We're giving people a shot to build things and to lead, who have proven that they have the abilities to do it. And ultimately, what it also does is, for the rest of the business, is lets them realize that there is potential here. I'm not just siloed in my role. If I want to show the business that I can do something, I'm going to do my role. I'm going to identify something that I believe that I can solve or build, and you're going to get a shot to do it. because it only helps the business. It only improves us. Sure, I might miss quota coverage if a rep wants to move from being an AE to doing something else, but for the business, it pays dividends to be able to let people do that.
Actually, a great segue to a question that I had is, how did that experience prepare you? Like the experience of becoming a leader prepared you for the role of VP sales? Like the first answer is, well, the shot that I was given at Argolia as an IC, I'm giving that shot the same way to the people that now are in my team. So that's like the first part of the answer. But what do you think, like, how do you think that role, those previous roles prepared you to become VP and not?
So I think the biggest difference between a mediocre sales leader and a great sales leader, a great sales leader fundamentally understands the engine. And when I say fundamentally understands the engine, they understand from lead to dollar, the mechanisms of the engine and the conversion rates of each stage of the engine, where they're going to build pipeline, the rate at which that pipeline is going to close, the regions in which how that pipeline performs differently than others. And what I learned from Argolia and what I learned from Gaetan was you need to care equally about the nuts and bolts of the engine and the revenue plan and the assumptions that you use as much as you care about the culture, health, and coaching of the sales organization. Really good sales leaders lean into coaching and lean into process. That's great. You can build a successful sales organization that way. But to be a successful revenue leader, you have to fundamentally understand how revenue works and the economics of it. And not everyone tries to really figure that out. And once you figure out both, it's unstoppable, because you know how to tweak the engine here and then go build a new segment that you think needs to exist, instead of just saying, "Ooh, I think this segment should exist. I think we should go after SMB, but why?" "Oh, well, I know we're talking to a bunch of 50-person companies." Okay, that's not how it works. Can your engine handle an SMB segment? Yes or no? And how do you figure that out? And so that's what helped me prepare to be a revenue leader, is being able to ask those really difficult questions and being able to appreciate the mechanics of the engine as much as appreciating the process piece of building sales.
Because you had people telling you, can you do more? Can you do more pipeline? Can you do more numbers? Can you do more of that,
right,
of the nuts and bolts that generate revenue?
Right. And your job as a revenue leader is to say yes or no. It's not to just say yes, but you have to be able to sit in a room of your peers and say, "No, that's not possible. And I will explain to you why it's not possible. And I'm going to explain to you why I'm not going to go hire 50 account executives and just throw bodies at the problem." Right? But other sales leaders, they don't take the time to understand the fundamentals of the engine to be able to explain why yes or no you're going to succeed building that plan. Just yesterday, I walked the sales organization through the 2022 plan. And I wanted them to really understand the assumptions that go into the revenue model so that they themselves understand how we're going to win next year. It's not just, we're going to have 3 segments, we're going to hire X amount of account executives, we're going to hire Y amount of BDRs, and that's what's going to make us successful. No, we're going to be successful because we believe this ratio will come from direct sales, this ratio will come from self-serve. We believe we're going to be able to have pipeline coverage from this source, this source, this source. You're going to be able to need to do X, Y, and Z. The funnel is going to provide for you this into these different segments. Everybody should understand how the model works.
That would be a great title for a new interview that we're going to do together next week. Yeah, so that was great. A question that I had, and I think that I got very often is, when you take on a role of VP of sales, like that moment when you take a leap of faith and join a company, another big risk, like again, imposter syndrome, especially when you want to take on new challenges. What are the kinds of things you look for when joining a company? Like, what's the kind of scorecard that you keep when deciding, all right, this is the next move that I'm going to make?
Yeah, that's a good
And
question.
how would you help people that might, like be wondering, okay, should I join this company? How do I make the call? Because that's quite a strong leap of faith that you do.
So there are basically three things, right? So there's product, there's people, and the job itself, right? Can I do the job? Can I physically do the job well? Because if you have a great product and you have great people, but you cannot convince yourself that you believe you're the best for that job, but you still take it, imposter syndrome is going to set in. Imposter syndrome is going to exist for a lot of people forever.
Yeah, actually, I would say that if you don't have imposter syndrome, especially in the hyper growth environments,
Yeah.
you probably should think twice.
Yeah,
because it's there.
yeah. Think a little more before you go to sleep. But this one, I think a lot of people forget about this one, which is just the role itself. Can you match your competency to enough of the role to do it well? If you can, that's good, right? Check the box. But a lot of people are applying to roles that they cannot do, right? That they cannot build a story to why they think they can do it and justify their abilities to be able to do the role. People. The reason I came to Bitrise from a people perspective is Barnabas got on a freaking plane, flew to Atlanta. We sat there, we had beers, and we talked about everything we imagine when building a sales organization, what we shouldn't have, right? What an unhealthy sales organization looks like, a revenue organization, and what a great one looks like. And also his ability to be incredibly transparent about the pains that need to be solved within a business, and his humility. That's the type of person that I want to be led by. Somebody who does not paint a rosy picture, who's very clear about what they need from somebody. You will get behind those people all day, and you should strive to be that kind of person. And so it's the people that I met, that I knew that I would go to war with and die on a hill every single day. And then the third is the products. And the way I evaluate a product, because I'm not an engineer, but I understand value propositions of products, I go talk to engineers. So the first thing that I did when I heard about Bitrise is I called Adam, right? I chatted with Paul Louis,
VP of Infrastructure and Security at Adgolia.
Exact. And we had a discussion, right? Is this a space, and is this a problem that's being solved? Really, is it impactful? And Adam's not going to lie, right? And engineers are not going to joke about it, right? They're not going to give you the runaround. They're going to say yes or no if this is a problem that's really worth solving and valuable. And then you have to believe that you can take that product, because in the early days, the way the product looks and feels and the features that it has are going to be different in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years to get to an IPO or to get to whatever the event is that's going to happen. So you have to believe that you can see what else can happen with the product, because spoiler alert, you're not going to IPO with one single product solving one single problem. And so if you can see that the product that you're also going to sell can evolve into other things, which is quite difficult, right? It doesn't mean that you have to figure that out, but if you can see the future problems it solves, even better. And so those three things are how I make a decision.
For tech product and PLG. I remember actually when I first discovered Algolia, they were doing like something like 1 million in ARR. And so how do you judge if a company is going to be wildly successful? And the first thing that I did was I just signed up to the product. I signed up and it was like a search engine. And so it was a highly technical product. I signed up and I thought, okay, if me, who has no technical background, can understand how it works and maybe like get a few things done. And I was really blown away by the onboarding experience at that time. And the company was like 10 people, 15 people. And something that very few people know, I think, is that when we were recruiting for salespeople, no matter how good they were, something that we always looked at is, did they create an account on Algolia? Were they curious enough to like create an account? And even if it's a super technical.
What word did you just use? Curious. Yeah. Curiosity. It's non-negotiable in the early days. Non-negotiable.
For everything almost. And I like the way you talked about your conversation when joining Bitrise and of the rosy picture. It actually reminds me of that book, from Ray Dalio, Principles, where he says, okay, like you got one job, it's understand reality and deal with it. But the first part is understanding, like having a clear view of what's real and how to deal with it. That's the second part. And the question I have is, usually when we hire someone is usually to get something done. For example, like when you got promoted to director of BD, it was, okay, bring pipeline, create pipeline. That was the main job. Of course, you had other things, build a team, build the office in Atlanta, but the first job was get this done. What do you think was the job, that initial job when you joined Bitrise, that you needed to be done? That's a tough one. But I'd love to have like elements if you have some.
I think I think there's a couple things. At some points when you're a PLG company, you tend to start with 100% self-serve, right? Which tends to focus on SMBs, right? You absolutely can have large enterprises come in self-serve. They'll put their credit card down. They'll spend $1,000, and you'll move on. And Bitrise did start building a sales team before I joined, and there were a couple of heads of sales before I joined. And what they were trying to do was validate the sales motion, validate the direct sales motion in harmony with the self-serve motion. And I think that's ultimately what needed to be solved. How do you build a revenue go-to-market motion where you do not cannibalize your acquisition engine of self-serve while maximizing the growth of the business with direct sales, which is where your large ACVs are going to come from, which is where your high NRR, net retention rate, is going to come from, which is where the SaaS model is built, right? Yeah. It's NRR. It's not ARR, it's NRR. And so how do you create that and not cannibalize the business, that critical self-serve long tail that's being created, that acquisition engine? That ultimately was something we needed to solve for, but also to give the sales organization a voice, right? A voice of the customer, a voice of their needs as a sales organization. Because what is my job as a VP of sales? It's not to create the revenue model, right? So of course, that's my job. But I'm an advocate, or I represent the sales organization. And one of our leads the other day said it perfectly when they brought a problem to me, and they said, I'm an advocate for my team, and that's why we need to talk about this. And that's your job. So I think there's two things, which is you're responsible for building a model that does not cannibalize one or the other when you have a PLG company, and the other is you're an advocate for your people.
One that you said was already like a pretty strong one, like how to combine bottom-up PLG with sales-led motion.
Mm.
And a lot of times it's very different and conflicting motions. Like think of a super horizontal product. It's going to be very hard. First thing, like you're going to have a lot of use cases with horizontal products and product led. Like think of type form. How many ways type form is used? Like there are tens, hundreds of ways that people are using type form, and it's sometimes super hard for marketing, technical teams, and even sales team to keep up. Whereas for like direct sales and enterprise or top to bottom, you'll tend to like focus on a vertical, build content, build case studies, and it's super hard if you want to combine like the two. So like quite a challenge. Again, another super interesting topic for another interview. All right, we don't have that much time, so I want to be conscious of your time because I think you have like a meeting right after. And by the way, today it's Thanksgiving, and so I appreciate the fact that you're working on that.
Yeah,
but this is what it takes. First 100 days. Okay, you just landed your dream job. You're now VP. What do you do in your first 100 days? What's your advice?
Shut up and listen, I think is always number one. I think when you're given goals as a VP sales, obviously they're quite quantitative, and you need to go hit the goal. But you're going to have bias, or you're at least going to have unconscious bias when you get into an organization and you start hearing problems, or you start seeing areas that you want to improve. And you're going to think there's no time to listen. You're going to think we have to have action, 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 change this, change trajectory, get to your end of your goal. I think the worst mistake you can make is to start changing things immediately. You should sit down. You should listen to every single person you can possibly listen to within the business and be able to say, okay, I now think I fundamentally understand the gaps. There are going to be hundreds of things you can be doing, but you have to choose what's going to be most impactful. But how do you know what's most impactful if you're not listening? So you have those first 100 days, as much as you possibly can, you have to listen to every single person in the whole customer lifecycle. And spoiler alert, that's everybody in the whole freaking business. It's not just the sales team. Go listen to the success team if there is one. Go speak to the product and engineering team. Go listen to everyone and say, okay, here's where I think the problem is, or here's where I think the most impactful change that can be made. The second thing, people. As a VP sales, you should be spending half of your time always on hiring. Oh, you're always hiring. And it's going to be the people. I'm not going to take this business to 100 million. Right? It's not going to be because of me that we go to IPO. It's going to be because of every single incredible human being that we hire into the business that fits our value system, that are able to make an impact. And so you have to go hire great people. You have to go hire the Sarah Rossens, who's our head of RevOps, the Zaid Guzos, who's going to lead BD with Ben LaBelle. You're going to go hire these great human beings that are going to turn into leaders and who are going to take this business to the next level. And it's, you don't think that the decisions that you're making within those first 100 days are going to impact a year from now, but they are, especially if you make the right ones during those first 100 days. And so for me, it's listen as much as you can to make the right decisions on where you're going to spend your energy to change or tweak things. And immediately, if you're in growth phase, it's hiring. Go find the best people you possibly can as fast as you can to fill the gaps that you have.
I'll stop there. Like I had lots and lots of other questions, but I gotta stop with this, like the people. And so, yeah, everyone, they're hiring. And if you want to have an amazing experience and become a leader, sales leader, just like you joined Algolia and then became a sales leader, go and talk to Alex. I'll give you his email. Let's wrap up. Thanks so much. That was super interesting. I think we could have gone and gone for hours and hours with other topics. I'll just finish with the famous 5, which is, all right, a book, business or non-business, a book that you would recommend.
How corny is this? But I just have it right. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a great one, and I think whether you're an IC or you're a leader, you're going to meet these people in your life, and I think it's a book worth reading. That's a hard thing about hard things.
If one should follow, study,
Sorry?
follow an executive that's someone should follow or study, like someone worth like following, knowing about.
I think I've said this one. I think I've said this one my entire life. But Richard Branson has always been a leader that's both economically and from a values perspective is somebody that I admire. Sorry for everyone who wants me to say a SaaS leader or somebody, but it's always going to be.
You want to go to space? No, that's the message you're sending. Like, choose me next time. Choose me.
Matan and I have always talked about this. So yeah, we'll go to space one day, and it'll be Richard Branson's ship.
What do you do to relax?
Oof, that's a good one. I have a tremendous ADHD, so I have to. For me, it's not. Curling up in front of the fire. I have to be outside.
Okay.
I go on a walk, or I go on a hike or something like this.
Cool. Favorite online tool?
Ooh, brutal. I'm gonna say the Bear note taking app. Great one.
Is it too? And who should I interview next?
Have you interviewed Guillaume?
Guillaume Duvaux?
Yeah.
That's a great one. So Guillaume Duvaux is a CEO of Terality, another amazing product. And yeah, that's a great one, actually. Thanks.
Yeah, I think Guillaume's a great person.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah,
let's have him on the show. It's going to be too Frenchies.
It's going to be. And he's from Marseille, so he's just, he's gonna blow up.
Marseille, baby. Exactly. All right. Thank you so much, Alex. That was amazing, and thanks for carving out the time. Super valuable insights. And cheers, everyone, and apply to Bitrise.
Please.
Or Palette, we're also hiring, but apply to Bitrise.
Bitrise first.
Cheers, man. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. We'd love to hear your feedback, so feel free to send us a message or ping us directly in the comments. And if you'd like to join our community, feel free to visit our website, operations.family. Cheers!